Many people wish to be remembered and revered throughout history, and they will set forth on their goal of creating this legacy. But some people simply wish to leave their mark on the world without ever having their identity revealed. Let's examine some of the most infamous and notorious people that will always be remembered without ever being known. This is the enigmatic and mysterious people Iceberg. Tupac's murderer. On the night of September 7th, 1996, at approximately 1:15 p.m., the rapper Tupac Shakur was shot by 4 .40 caliber bullets fired from a Glock, ultimately passing away by his wounds in the hospital just 6 days later. To this day, the murder is still unsolved, as there has never been enough evidence to lead an arrest of any kind. However, most people seem to unanimously agree that it most likely was Orlando Tive Anderson, the prime suspect of the case and known for as Tupac's murderer by most. It is reported that Anderson had an ongoing feud with Tupac and the label Death Row Records. According to witnesses, he was attacked by Tupac on the night of the shooting, and multiple detectives working on the case have claimed to have been told that Anderson had stated he was going to kill Tupac. Anderson denied any involvement in the murder and never had any charges pressed against him. But shortly after the shooting, he himself was shot dead in a gang-related shootout in Compton, California. Yasuke. Yasuke, known as the first African samurai, arrived in Japan in 1579, who served under the daimyo Oda Nobunaga, and after his death, his heir Oda Nobutada. Not much is known in relation to Yasuke's life, due to most of it being lost to time. Many adaptations of Yasuke's story have been shown in popular culture, such as the Netflix show by the same name or the character in Neo. Grigori Rasputin. Grigori Rasputin was one of Russia's most infamous and enigmatic figures. Posing as a, quote, holy man, he used a series of political maneuvers, repulsive scandals, and treachery to destroy the political image and reputation of Russia's emperor, Tsar Nicholas II, and his family. He also assisted the communists in planning the disastrous Russian Revolution. His mysterious actions are still disputed by historians and religious writers, primarily because he left no papers or documents other than a few messages while working behind the scenes in the palaces of the Russian Tsars, and kept out of the public's view due to the intense security that the Russian imperial family was protected by. Murderer of Notorious B.I.G. Christopher Wallace, an American rapper known professionally as the Notorious B.I.G., was murdered in a drive-by shooting in the early hours of March 9, 1997, in Los Angeles, California. He was 24 at the time. Wallace's mother, Voletta Wallace, his widow, Faith Evans, and his children sued the Los Angeles Police Department for $400 million in a second wrongful death lawsuit in 2006, claiming that corrupt officers were to blame for Wallace's passing. Former LAPD officer Greg Kading said that the Death Row Records Marion Suge Knight planned the assassination as retaliation for the similar drive-by shooting death of Tupac Shakur in 1996. Tank Man. Tank Man, also known as the Unknown Protester or the Unknown Rebel, is the nickname of an unidentified Chinese man who stood in front of a column of Type 59 tanks leaving the Tiananmen Square in Beijing on June 5, 1989, the day after the Chinese government's violent crackdown on the Tiananmen protests. He continually changed positions to hinder the lead tank's attempts to maneuver past him as it tried to pass him by. The incident was captured on camera and broadcast to a global audience. Internationally, it is considered one of the most iconic images of all time. The picture and the related activities are censored inside of China. The man's identity and whereabouts are unknown, and it's also unclear exactly what happened to the tank crew. Tank Man was not the first protester to obstruct the tanks, according to at least one eyewitness, but he stands out because he is the only one whose actions were documented in photographs and videos. Jack the Ripper. This was an English serial killer born between August and November 1888. He murdered at least 5 women in or near the Whitechapel district of London's East End. Jack the Ripper was never identified or arrested. For years, people have speculated about his identity. Commonly cited suspects include Montague Druitt, a barrister and teacher with an interest in surgery, Michael Ostrog, a Russian criminal and physician, and Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant who lived in Whitechapel. All of Jack's victims were prostitutes, and all but one were killed while soliciting customers on the street. In each instance, the victim's throat was cut and the body was mutilated in a manner indicating that the murderer had at least some knowledge of human anatomy.
Maker. Yes, Rom? Remember to remind people to do the algorithm thing. Rom, they already know to like and subscribe and leave a comment. You are welcome. Ungrateful son of a...
Babushka Lady. The Babushka Lady is an unidentified woman present during the 1963 assassination of U.S. President John F. Kennedy, who might have photographed or filmed the events that occurred in Dallas Dealey Plaza at the time the president was shot. Her nickname arose from the headscarf she wore, which was similar to scarves worn by elderly Russian women. She was last seen in photographs walking east on Elm Street. Neither she nor the film she may have taken have ever been positively identified. Zodiac Killer. An unidentified serial killer who operated in Northern California in the late 1960s went by the moniker the Zodiac Killer. According to some accounts, the case is the most well-known unsolved murder in American history. It has influenced popular culture and sparked the interest of amateur investigators in the case's resolution. Between December 1968 and October of the following year, the Zodiac Killer systematically murdered 5 people in the San Francisco Bay Area, carrying out his crimes in suburban, urban, and rural areas. His known crimes occurred in Benicia, Vallejo, unincorporated Napa County, and the actual city of San Francisco. He specifically targeted young couples and a single male cab driver, and 2 of his attempted victims survived. The Zodiac, who allegedly claimed to have killed 37 people, has also been connected to a number of unsolved cold cases, some of which took place in Southern California and elsewhere. While various possibilities regarding the identity of the killer have been presented, the only suspect police have publicly named was Arthur Lee Allen, a former elementary school teacher and convicted sex offender who died in 1992. Aleister Crowley. This was an occultist, ceremonial magician, mountaineer, poet, painter, and writer from England. He established the Thelema cult in the early 20th century, claiming to be the prophet tasked with leading people into the reign of Horus. He authored a number of works throughout his life, as he was a prolific writer. Due to his lifestyle as a recreational drug user, bisexuality, and individualistic social critic, Crowley attained widespread renown. In Thelema, Crowley is still seen as a prophet and has remained a key figure in Western esotericism and the counterculture of the 1960s. Numerous biographies and scholarly studies have been written on him. D.B. Cooper. An unnamed individual hijacked Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a Boeing 727 airplane, in American airspace on the afternoon of November 24, 1971. He was referred to in the media as D.B. Cooper. The aircraft was flying from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. Halfway through the second trip, the hijacker demanded a $200,000 ransom, equivalent to $1.3 million in 2022. He then requested to be transported to Mexico City. He then parachuted to an uncertain fate over southwestern Washington. The story was only made more complicated when a small piece of the ransom was discovered in 1980 along the banks of the Columbia River. The vast remainder of the money is still unrecovered. Anastasia Romanova. Grand Duchess Anastasia of Russia, better known as Anastasia Romanova, was the youngest daughter of Tsar Nicholas II, the last sovereign of Imperial Russia, and his wife, Tsarina Alexandra Fyodorovna. She was killed with her family by a group of Bolsheviks in Yekaterinburg on the 17th of July in 1918. However, after she died, rumors about her survival and possible escape started circulating. These rumors were fueled by the fact that the location of her burial was unknown during the decades of communist rule. However, in 2007, her remains were indeed found, and several DNA tests confirmed that she did in fact die in 1918 alongside the rest of her family. Man in the Iron Mask. During the reign of King Louis XIV of France, the man wearing the Iron Mask was an unnamed prisoner of state who had been detained in July 1669 under the alias Eustache Dauger and imprisoned for 34 years. He was kept in the care of the same jailer in 4 successive French prisons, including the Bastille, and was renowned for remaining unidentifiable throughout his time in prison. He passed away there on November 19, 1703, and his inhumation certificate listed his name as Marchiali. Even though the true identity of this prisoner has been hotly contested by historians and has been the subject of several books, articles, plays, and films, it is still a mystery. One of the most popular theories is that the French prisoner was an older, illegitimate brother of Louis XIV, as alleged by the French philosopher and author Voltaire in the second edition of his Questions sur Encyclopédie. Later writers who offered variations of this Aristotic answer reiterated this claim of a royal connection. Charlie Chaplin's Time Traveler. Chaplin's Time Traveler is a movie clip that Northern Irish filmmaker George Clark posted to YouTube in October 2010. The video examines extras found on the DVD of the Charlie Chaplin movie The Circus. The DVD contains video from the movie's 1928 Los Angeles debut at Grauman's Chinese Theater. A woman can be seen passing by at one point while holding something to her ear. Clark said that on closer examination, she was talking into a thin, black device that had appeared to be a phone. Clark came to the conclusion that the woman might have been a time traveler. Millions of people have viewed this video, and it was the focus of several television news reports. Spring-Heeled Jack. This is an entity in English folklore of the Victorian era. Spring-Heeled Jack was first allegedly seen in 1837 all around the United Kingdom. Reports of later sightings were made, but suburban London, the Midlands, and Scotland received the most reports. The identity and characteristics of Spring-Heeled Jack are the subject of numerous speculations. Due to accounts of his peculiar appearance and prodigious leaping abilities, this urban legend enjoyed great popularity at the time and even inspired various works of literature. Berserker of Stamford Bridge. The Battle of Stamford Bridge, fought between the English army of Harold Godwinson and the Norwegian Vikings under the command of Harald Hardrada, is remembered in the Viking sagas as the heroic last stand of the lone Viking, a berserker warrior who goes unnamed. The berserker faced the entire English army alone after drinking his elixir, which gave him bloodlust. He also prayed to Odin for strength. The English assaulted the Viking in an attempt to approach their commander, but the berserker's enormous axe and sword killed many of them. He held the bridge for a long time and, by himself, managed to kill more than 40 English soldiers. But when a soldier rode to the foot of the bridge and fatally stabbed the Viking in the crotch, the berserker finally fell to the English. The Vikings were soon defeated when the English poured into their position. His sacrifice was in vain, as Harald Hardrada and many of his Vikings were soon slain afterwards, marking the end of the Viking Age. Madeleine Mccann. British toddler of this name, born 12 May 2003, vanished on the evening of May 3, 2007, from her bed in a vacation apartment in the resort of Praia da Luz, Portugal's Algarve region. The disappearance was dubbed the most heavily publicized missing person case in modern history by the Daily Telegraph. Madeleine's whereabouts are still unknown, but German prosecutors think she has passed away. Chip Chan. This is a Korean woman of unknown age who claims to have been implanted with a mind-controlling device that, quote, P, a dishonest police officer, was holding her prison. She has been live streaming her flat every day for more than 10 years using several websites. 2008 saw the initial appearance of Chip Chan in a 4chan webcam topic. Users research several open source cameras in these threads and share their findings. When Chip Chan was found sleeping in an odd position, it was initially believed that she was dead, which attracted attention to the location. It soon became apparent that she was sleeping, albeit at odd times of the day and for unnaturally extended stretches of time. She spends her nights on the floor or in a very uncomfortable chair position. She claimed to have been implemented with a mind control device, quote, at a cartilage bone 3 centimeters off the ankle bone, on her WordPress site, which was eventually discovered by an anonymous user and led to dozens of other blogs. Over the years, a number of theories about Chip Chan have emerged, with hypotheses ranging from it being an art project, to her being very unwell mentally, or the whole story being real. People have made repeated attempts to get in touch with her, calling the police and even paying visits at her home. Gregory Villemin. Gregory Villemin, a French child, was kidnapped and murdered when he was only 4 years old. His body was discovered in a nearby river. The Gregory affair was the name given to this case, which has drawn attention from the public and the media in France for many years. The murder was never solved. Fulcinelli. A French alchemist and esoteric writer whose identity is still disputed, went by the name Fulcinelli. The name seems to be a play on words Vulcan, the ancient Roman god of fire, plus El, a Canaanite name for God, and so the sacred fire. The mystery surrounding most aspects of Fulcinelli's life and work contributes to his appeal as a cultural phenomenon. One anecdote about his life recounts, in particular, how his most devoted student allegedly successfully transmuted 100 grams of lead into gold using a small amount of the, quote, projection powder given to him by Fulcinelli. Agent 355. 355, who died after 1780, was the cover name of a female spy who worked for the Culper Ring during the American Revolution. She was one of the earliest spies working for the US, but nobody knew who she really was. The Culper Ring employed a decryption method that allowed the number 355 to be translated into the word woman. Although 355's exact identity is still a mystery, some aspects of her life are apparent. She served as a spy for the American Patriots during the Revolutionary War, and was probably lured into the spy network by Woodhull. She may have enjoyed some kind of social significance based on the way the code was written. She most certainly resided in New York City at the time, and interacted with Benedict Arnold and Major John Andre at various points. Anna Strong, Woodhull's neighbor, has been mentioned as one candidate for Agent 355's identity. John Tidor. An individual posting under the alias John Tidor and Time Travel Zero on the Time Travel Institute and Art Bell's Post to Post forum in 2000 and 2001 claimed to be an American military time traveler from 2036. In 2004 and beyond, Tidor predicted a number of terrible occurrences, including a nuclear war, both broadly and precisely. His explanations were inconsistent, his forecasts were consistently inaccurate, and the results of a private investigator all contributed to the perception that the entire incident was a sophisticated hoax. A 2009 investigation concluded that Tidor was likely the creation of Larry Haber, a Florida entertainment lawyer, along with his brother Maury, a computer scientist. Green Children of Woolpit. The legend of the Green Children of Woolpit concerns two children of unusual skin color who reportedly appeared in the village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England. Sometime in the 12th century, perhaps during the reign of King Stephen. With the exception of their green skin, the brother and sister's look was generally normal. They would only eat uncooked, broad beans and speak an unidentified language. They eventually acquired the ability to consume other foods and lost their green color, but the boy got ill and passed shortly after his sister was christened. Although the girl adapted to her new life, many still thought of her as extremely wanton and impudent. The girl revealed that she and her brother both moved to England after learning English. The girl explained that she and her brother had come from a land where the sun never shone. According to one version of the story, she said that everything there was green. According to another, she said it was called St. Martin's Land. Satoshi Nakamoto. This is the name used as a pseudonym for the person or persons who had developed Bitcoin, authored the Bitcoin white paper, and created and deployed Bitcoin's original reference implementation. As part of the implementation, Nakamoto also devised the first blockchain database. Up until December 2010, Nakamoto was involved with the development of Bitcoin up until 2010. There has been widespread speculation about Satoshi Nakamoto's true identity, with a variety of people posited as the person or persons behind the name. However, this allegation has been regarded with skepticism. One person, Australian computer scientist Craig Stephen Wright, has openly claimed to be Nakamoto, although Nakamoto's name is Japanese, and he claimed to be a man from Japan in 2012. The majority of the rumors have focused on computer programmers and/or cryptography specialists in the United States or Europe. Cicada 3301 creators. Cicada 3301 is the nickname given to the entity that posted 3 sets of puzzles online between 2012 and 2014. On January 4th of 2012, 4chan hosted the first internet crossword, which lasted for almost a month. A second round started on January 4th of 2013, 1 year later, and a third round started on January 4th of 2014, which was the day after a new clue was confirmed and released on Twitter. There is still no answer for the third puzzle. The claimed goal was to find, quote, intellectual folks by presenting a series of riddles to be solved. On January 4th, 2015, no new challenges were released. And on January 5th, 2016, a fresh hint was published on Twitter. In April of 2017, Cicada 3301 published their final authenticated OpenPGP signed letter rejecting the legitimacy of any unsigned puzzle. Kasper Hauser. German boy Kasper Hauser, who lived from April of 1812 to December of 1833, claimed to have spent his early life completely alone in a cramped chamber. Following Hauser's allegations and his eventual death from a left breast knife wound, there was a great deal of discussion and controversy. According to theories put up at the time, he was a Grand Ducal House of Baden member who had been imprisoned due to royal intrigue. Later investigations may or may not have verified these claims. According to certain theories, Hauser was actually just a fraud. The Axeman of New Orleans. Between May 1918 and October 1919, the American serial killer known as the Axeman of New Orleans terrorized Gretna and the neighboring areas of New Orleans, Louisiana. Similar murders were described in press reports during the height of the public panic over the killings as early as 1911. However, modern academics have questioned these reports. The killings are still unsolved, and the axeman was never found. Italian immigrants and Italian Americans were his principal targets. This raises the suspicion that the homicides were racially motivated, albeit this was never definitively confirmed because the killer was never apprehended. As suddenly as it had begun, the crime wave abruptly came to an end. The identity of the murderer is still a mystery, despite the fact that several plausible identifications have been put out. Newspapers released a letter allegedly written by the Axeman on March 13, 1919, stating that he would kill once again at 15 minutes after midnight on March 19th, but would spare anyone inside the establishment hosting a jazz concert. All of New Orleans dance halls were packed that night, and jazz music was being played at gatherings in hundreds of homes around the city by both professional and amateur bands. That evening, no killings took place. Le Loyan, often referred to as the Ghost of Malls, is a Swiss urban legend about an alleged humanoid creature that was reported to prowl the woodlands close to the Swiss village of Malls. Le Loyan was characterized as a large humanoid figure covered in a full-face gas mask, a boiler suit, and a cloak. Le Loyan was initially discovered in the late 1990s or early 2000s. In one of the reported sightings, a local woman claimed to have seen the character picking flowers on the trail and was startled to be seen by her. There are several theories concerning the identity of the individual. For example, some claim it might be a mentally ill woman, a gigantic man, someone suffering from a skin condition, or a survivalist. The first known image of Le Loyan was published in September of 2013 by the Swiss French-language newspaper Le Matin and was captured by an unidentified amateur photographer. After the event went viral online, Le Matin said that Le Loyan's cloak and gas mask, as well as the note labeled, quote, death certificate and testament of the Ghost of Malls, were discovered in the Malls forest. Le Loyan was allegedly aware of the widespread circulated photo and disgruntled by the unwarranted attention the woodland received, according to the note. One of the theories claimed that the figure was an eccentric local who was afraid of being linked to Le Loyan and abandoned their costumed walks as a result. However, the way the note was worded led some to believe that the character had taken their own life. Man from Taured. A 36-year-old man identified as John Allen Kuchar Zagreus entered Japan with his Korean wife in October 1959. He was detained by the local police department 3 months later on suspicion of identity fraud. At the Japanese offices of Chase Manhattan Bank and Bank of Korea, he attempted to cash 2 checks. The story was reported with a few changes on a copy of the province and was published on August 15, 1960. The newspaper claimed in an article headed, "Man with His Own Country," that the character had a passport issued at Tamanrasset, the capital of Taured, south of the Sahara, and claimed to be a, quote, naturalized Ethiopian and an intelligent agent for Colonel Nasser. El Dorado Gilden Man. The Muisca people are an indigenous group of Colombia, and the term, quote, Golden Man was first used by the Spanish in the 16th century to refer to a mythical tribal chief or king of the Muisca people who, as part of an initiation rite, covered himself in gold dust and submerged in a nearby lake. As El Dorado transitioned from being a man to a city to a kingdom to an empire, the mythology surrounding it altered over time. Gardner Museum Incident Guise. 13 items of art were taken from the Boston area Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in the wee hours of March 18, 1990. 2 individuals who claimed to be police officers responding to a disturbance were allowed in by the guards, and over the course of the following hour, the criminals robbed the museum while the guards were handcuffed. There have been no arrests made, no artwork had been found, and the case remains completely unsolved. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and art dealers have estimated the value of the stolen pieces to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. The museum is offering a $10 million reward for information leading to the art's recovery, the largest bounty ever offered by a private institution. One theory is that the gangster Bobby Donati organized it to negotiate a release from prison. Donati was murdered a year after the robbery. Other reports claim that a gang in Boston's Dorchester neighborhood stole the paintings, although they continued to deny any involvement, even after a sting operation resulted in the imprisonment of some of them. Despite being promised reward money, shortened prison terms, or even freedom in exchange for information that led to the recovery of the artwork, all have denied any knowledge or have provided leads that proved useless. Man in the Hole. An indigenous Brazilian man known as, quote, the Man of the Hole, lives by himself in the Amazon jungle. He is thought to be his tribe's only living member. His native tongue and the name of his tribe are both unknown. Although officials and media refer to him this way, his real name is still unknown. John Doe Number 24. This was the name given to a deaf and later blind man in Jacksonville, Illinois, who was put in a mental institution in 1945 as a teenager. He spent 30 years at the Lincoln Developmental Center and was transferred several times, eventually to a senior center in Peoria. He died in 1993 at the estimated age of 64. His life was covered by the biography God Knows His Name, The True Story of John Doe Number 24 by journalist David Back. When American singer Mary Carpenter learned of Doe's wife, she purchased a tombstone and placed it over his unmarked grave. Carpenter also wrote a song titled John Doe Number 24 on the album Stones in the Road, which was released in October of 1994. Mad Gasser of Mattoon. This was the name given to the person or people believed to be responsible for a series of apparent gas attacks that occurred in Mattoon, Illinois during the mid-1940s. Over the course of 2 weeks, authorities received reports of more than 24 other gassing incidents in addition to several sightings of the alleged attacker. In their homes, the alleged victims of the gasser reported detecting unusual odors, which were quickly followed by symptoms like limb paralysis, coughing, nausea, and vomiting, though no one died or had serious medical consequences. Count Saint-Germain. European explorer, the Comte de Saint-Germain had a passion for the arts, science, and alchemy. He rose to popularity in the middle of the 18th century in high society of Europe. He was regarded as, quote, one of the greatest philosophers who ever lived by Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel. Saint-Germain adopted a number of names and titles, as was customary among the nobility and monarchy of the time. Although his birth and upbringing are unknown, along with his real name, he asserted near the end of his life that he was the son of Prince Francis II of Transylvania. His name has occasionally led to him being mistaken for renowned French General Claude Louis, Comte de Saint-Germain. Green Boots. This was the name given to the unidentified body of a climber that became a landmark on the main northeast bridge route of Mount Everest. Although the man's identity has not yet been confirmed, it is thought that he is Sewang Palyor, an Indian climber who perished on Everest in 1996. The green Kaflak mountaineering boots on his feet are where the term green boots first appeared. All expeditions from the north side encountered the body curled in the limestone alcove cave at 8,500 meters, or nearly 30,000 feet, until it was moved in 2014. Gil Perez. A Spanish soldier with this name is said to have been eerily transported from Manila in the Philippines to the Plaza Mayor in Mexico City in October 1593, according to a folktale. The Mexicans didn't believe the soldier when he said he was from the Philippines. 21st century paranormal researchers who believe the account have proposed teleportation and alien abduction as possible explanations. Boy in the Box. The Boy in the Box is an unidentified murder victim. A 3 to 7-year-old boy was found with an extensively beaten body on the side of a road in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on February 25, 1957. Even though he had recently had his hair cut and his fingernails trimmed, he had endured significant physical abuse before passing away, as seen by the numerous bruises on his body. He also appeared to have been washed and well groomed. He was also discovered to be underweight. There were several scars on the body, some of which were surgical, most notably on his ankle, groin, and chin. Both the police and the general public concur that blunt force trauma homicide was the cause of death. Poe Toaster. This term is used in the media to refer to an unnamed individual who, for many years, visited the cenotaph honoring American author Edgar Allan Poe's original grave in Baltimore, Maryland, early on January 19, Poe's birthday. The mysterious man would pour himself a glass of cognac and toast Poe's memory before disappearing into the night with the unfinished bottle of cognac and 3 roses in a particular arrangement. He would be dressed in all black with a wide-brimmed hat and a white scarf. Every year, crowds gathered in hopes to spotting the elusive toaster, who avoided the spotlight and was infrequently seen or captured on camera. Monsieur Chouchani. Emmanuel Levinas and Elie Wiesel were among the disciples of an unnamed and enigmatic Jewish teacher known only as Monsieur Chouchani, who taught in Israel, South America, post-World War II Europe, and other locations. Not much is known about Chouchani, including his real name, a secret which he zealously guarded. He is buried in La Paz's Israeli cemetery. Somorton Man. This was an unidentified man whose body was discovered on the beach in Somorton Park in South Australia, in a South Australian suburb on December 1st, 1948. The case is particularly famous for the Persian word tamam shud, which means is over or is finished, and was found on a scrap of paper that was later discovered in the man's pants fob pocket. The fragment was taken from the last page of a copy of Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat, which was written in the 12th century. Since the beginning of the police investigation, the case has been regarded as, quote, one of Australia's most profound mysteries. Since then, there has been a lot of strong speculation about the victim's identity, the reason for his death, and the circumstances surrounding it. The death occurred during a period of increased international tensions following the start of the Cold War. The apparent use of a secret code, the potential use of an undetectable poison, and the inability of the authorities to identify the deceased all contribute to the case's continued public interest. On July 26, 2022, Adelaide University Professor Derek Abbott, in association with gynecologist Colleen M. Fitzpatrick, claimed to have identified the man as Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker born in 1905, based on genetic genealogy from the DNA of the man's hair. The Isdal Woman. On the afternoon of November 29, 1970, a man and his 2 young daughters were hiking in the Ice Valley. They were in the foothills of Ulriken's North Face, a region also known as the Death Valley, due to the number of recent hiking accidents and the region's history of self-deletions in the Middle Ages. One of the daughters discovered the burned body of a woman hidden under some screen after smelling an odd burning smell. The group returned to town to inform the police, shocked and terrified. Since then, the woman has been dubbed the Isdal Woman. Police at the time concluded that the death was likely a self-deletion, but the circumstances of the case led to later rumors and an ongoing investigation. Half a century later, it remains one of the most profound Cold War mysteries in Norwegian history. Shanti Devi. This individual, known as the Lugdi Devi in her alleged past life, was an Indian woman who claimed to remember her previous life and became the subject of reincarnation research. While a different report by researcher Bal Chand Nahara refuted her assertion, a commission established by the Indian political figure Mahatma Gandhi approved it. Other researchers subsequently conducted interviews with her and wrote books and articles about her. Due to the amount of facts she knew and the eerie circumstances of the story, she is considered the only known case of actual reincarnation in all of human history. Oslo Plaza Woman. The Oslo Plaza Hotel is known for the mysterious death of an unidentified woman in 1995. On June 3rd of that year, the body of the woman was found inside room 2805. She checked into the hotel with the false name of Jennifer Fairgate, but she misspelled the last name as Fergate twice on hotel paperwork. On these forms, it appeared that a man by the name of Lois Fairgate checked in with her. Unfortunately, it's unclear of his involvement, identity, or location at the time of her death or during her stay. She was last seen alive the previous day when she ordered room service at 8:06 p.m. Kristen Anderson delivered the food to the woman and noticed the room she was staying was, quote, almost sterile. This meal is significant because the autopsy found undigested food in her stomach, suggesting that she died the day she ordered the meal, not the day after like investigators originally assumed. Gloria Ramirez. This was a resident of Riverside, California, who earned the moniker, quote, the Toxic Lady or the Toxic Woman, after multiple hospital staff members became ill after coming into contact with her body and blood. She had late-stage cervical cancer and had been checked into the emergency room. Several hospital staff members passed out while caring for Ramirez, and others suffered from symptoms like muscular spasms and shortness of breath. 5 employees needed to be hospitalized, and one of them spent 2 weeks in an intensive care unit. Countess of Desmond. Catherine Fitzgerald, Countess of Desmond, was a noblewoman of the Anglo-Norman Fitzgerald dynasty in Ireland. Because of her longevity, English writers of the Tudor era, like Sir Walter Raleigh, contributed to the spread of the moniker, the Old Countess of Desmond. Her estimated age of death was above 120 years, according to one estimate. Another reached a maximum of 140 years, though she most likely lived to be around 100. Catherine was at least 90 years old when she passed away, according to a new biography of the Countess. Bodhidharma. This was a semi-legendary Buddhist monk who lived during the 5th or 6th century. He is revered as China's first patriarch and is generally credited with bringing Buddhism to the country. Shaolin Kung Fu is thought to have originated from the physical training he started for the monks at Shaolin Monastery. China refers to him as Damo, and Japan refers to him as Daruma. His name is Sanskrit for Dharma of Waking. There is not much current biographical information on Bodhidharma, and later accounts became stacked with legend and questionable information. Akhenaten. Ancient Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten ruled in the 13th century. As a pharaoh, Akhenaten is noted for abandoning Egypt's traditional polytheism and introducing Atenism, a worship centered around Aten. After his passing, this cultural shift away from conventional religion was reversed. His sculptures were demolished, his monuments disassembled, and his name omitted from the lists of kings made by later pharaohs. Elisa Lam. On February 19, 2013, the body of Chinese-Canadian tourist Elisa Lam was recovered from a large cistern atop the Stay on Main Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, where she had been a guest. Her parents first reported her missing on February 1st, after her last known whereabouts on January 31st. A hotel maintenance worker, looking into reports of flooding and low water pressure, found her body. Interest in Lam's disappearance increased on February 13th when the Los Angeles Police Department released security camera footage of her behaving erratically in a hotel elevator on the day she was last seen alive. The video gained a notorious amount of popularity. Several theories emerged to explain her actions. One was that Lam was trying to get the elevator car to move in order to escape from someone who was pursuing her. Others suggest that she might be under the influence of ecstasy or some other party drug, but none was detected in her body. Wolf Messing. The self-described psychic, telepath, and stage hypnotist Wolf Gregorovich Messing began entertaining the public as a psychic while he was just a teenager. Later in life, he was appointed to Stalin's personal wizard. Messing claimed to be able to transmit mental ideas to influence people's perceptions. Sigmund Freud and Albert Einstein were among his friends. Edward Kelly. Sir Edward Kelly was an English Renaissance occultist and scryer. His collaboration with John Dee on his magical research is what made him most famous. In addition to the alleged ability to see ghosts or angels in a shoe stone or mirror, which John Dee so admired, Kelly also asserted to have the key to alchemy's ultimate objective of turning base metals into gold, and the fabled Philosopher's Stone itself. After Kelly's passing, legends started to circulate: his colorful life story, friendships with Emperor Rudolph II, and Queen Elizabeth I, Royal Magus Sir John Dee, as well as his claims of mastery of alchemy and communication with angels, have all contributed to his relative reputation among historians. Sidney Gottlieb. This was an American chemist and spy master who headed the Central Intelligence Agency's 1950s and 1960s assassination attempts and mind control program known as Project MKUltra. Gottlieb also hatched schemes to assassinate Castro, including the use of a poisoned cigar, a poisoned wetsuit, an exploding conch shell, and a poisonous fountain pen. Gottlieb also played a role in the CIA's attempt to assassinate Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba of the Congo. He took a vial of poison to the Congo with plans to place it on Lumumba's toothbrush in the summer of 1960. Acre Boy. On March 27, 2017, Bruno de Melo Silva Borges, a Brazilian student, disappeared after leaving his home in Rio Branco, Acre. In his bedroom, Borges left several encrypted messages, 14 handwritten books, and a statue of philosopher Giordano Bruno. The civil police of Acre investigated the case, and Interpol was called. The character's disappearance received wide coverage on the internet, generating memes and online investigations. During the investigation, it was revealed that the character had the help of 2 friends and a cousin to carry out the project, and that he had signed a contract allocating part of the proceeds of the sale of his books to his 3 helpers. At dawn on August 11th of the same year, the character returned to his house barefoot, debilitated, and dehydrated. Borges told Police Chief Alcino Junior he disappeared of his own free will and that he was not coerced by any external force, and he did not reveal his hiding place. Günther Stoll. In 1984, Günther Stoll, an unemployed food engineer from Anshausen, was suffering from a moderate case of paranoia. Prior to his death, he occasionally spoke to his wife of, quote, them, unknown people who supposedly intended to harm him. He mentioned them specifically on the evening of 25 October 1984 before suddenly shouting, "Now I've got it." He then wrote the 6 letters YOGTZE. It is not conclusive if the third letter was intended to be a 6 or a G on a sheet of paper before instantly crossing them out. Shortly after, Stoll visited his preferred bar, ordered a beer, and then fell to the ground, breaking his face. He was not drunk, according to witnesses, and he had lost consciousness out of the blue. He got up and got into his car, and what he did throughout the course of the next 2 hours is unknown. At around 3 in the morning, 2 truckers came across Stoll's wrecked car in a trench. Both truck drivers reported that they saw a wounded individual wearing a white jacket strolling close to the car. The drivers discovered the badly hurt Günther Stoll naked in his car and then called the police. He recalled 4 more males who had been in the car with him, but had fled while he was still conscious. Stoll denied that the men were his pals when questioned about it. He died on the way to the hospital. The meaning of the letters YOGTZE remains unknown. The Unknown Woman of Seine. This was an unidentified young woman whose putative death mask became a popular fixture on the walls of artist homes after 1900. Many literary works were inspired by her appearance. Igor Dyatlov. The Dyatlov Pass incident was an event in which 9 Soviet trekkers died in the northern Ural Mountains between the 1st and 2nd of February 1959 in uncertain circumstances. Igor Dyatlov was in charge of the skilled trekking team from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, which had set up camp on the eastern slopes of the Soviet Union. Something happened overnight, forcing them to cut their way out of the tent and leave the campsite without the proper clothing for the heavy snowfall and below freezing conditions. Following the discovery of the group's bodies, a Soviet inquiry found that the 6 of them had perished from hypothermia, while the other 3 had perished from physical abuse. Animal assaults, hypothermia, an avalanche, katabatic winds, infrasound-induced fear, military participation, or some combination of these theories have all been proposed to explain the unexplained deaths. A mountain pass in the area was later named Dyatlov Pass in memory of the group. In many languages, the incident is now referred to as the Dyatlov Pass incident. Benjaman Kyle. This was the alias chosen by an American man who had severe amnesia. On August 31st, 2004, he was found naked and injured, without any possession or identification, next to a dumpster behind a Burger King restaurant in Richmond Hill, Georgia. Between 2004 and 2015, neither he nor the authorities had determined his identity or background, despite searches that had included television publicity and various other methods. In late 2015, genetic detective work, which had gone on for years, led to the discovery of his identity as William Burgess Powell, born August 29, 1948. His personal history still has a gap of more than 20 years without any supporting documentation. His social security number was rediscovered, restoring his ability to work and qualify for governmental support. Aristes. Aristes was a semi-legendary Greek poet and miracle worker, a native in Asia Minor. The Suda claims that his soul could depart from and re-enter his body whenever he pleased. Aristes has reported to have manifested 240 years after his passing in Metapontum, southern Italy, to order the construction of a statue of himself and a new altar honoring Apollo. He is said to have claimed that since his passing, he had been traveling with Apollo in the guise of a sacred raven. Li Qing Yun. This was a Chinese herbalist who was claimed by others to have lived to be 256. He stated that he was born in 1736, making him 197 years old at the time of his passing. He was survived by his 24th wife, a woman of 60 years. During his lifetime, Li is said to have left behind over 200 descendants and survived 23 spouses. According to some records, he had 14 marriages and 180 descendants spread across 11 generations at the time of his death. Li's claim could likely never be firmly established. In comparison to contemporary sources, the census data for rural 17th century China is so lacking that any kind of fruitful research is highly unlikely. The narrative of Li is similar to other Chinese longevity legends, such as Chen Jun's 443 years and extraordinary fecundity. The exaggerated claim and resemblance to already discredited longevity myths have led specialists to generally doubt the claim of his fabled age. It's impossible to prove or disprove conclusively that he was a true supercentenarian of some kind. However, there is no written documentation to back up this assertion. Max Headroom Incident Guy. The Max Headroom signal hijacking took place on the evening of November 22, 1987. When the television signals of two stations in Chicago, Illinois, were taken over. The pirate broadcast briefly reached thousands of home viewers and featured an unidentified person wearing a Max Headroom mask and costume. The first occurrence happened during the sports part of a newscast at 9 p.m. on an independent TV station, WGN-TV. Similar to the later signal intrusion, it showed a man in a mask swaying uncontrollably in front of a rotating corrugated metal screen that appeared to be intended to replicate the moving geometric background used by Max Headroom. The sole sound, unlike the later intrusion, was a loud buzz. Engineers at WGN were unable to recover control of their broadcast tower for nearly 30 seconds during this interruption. 2 hours later, during the Doctor Who broadcast on PBS member station WTTW, the second occurrence happened. The masked assailant could be overheard talking about things that seemed irrelevant, such as the animated television series Clutch Cargo. WGN sportscaster Chuck Swirsky, quote, "world's greatest newspaper nerds," and advertising for new Coke that the actual Max Headroom once voiced. The video ended with a side view of someone having their naked buttocks slapped by a lady brandishing a fly swatter as a voice crowd out, "Oh no, they're coming for me." Another voice responded, "Bend over, bitch," as the figure sobbed. After a total disruption of around 90 seconds, the private transmission terminated and regular programming resumed once again. The offenders have not been positively identified despite several unofficial inquiries and a great deal of conjecture over the years since the Federal Communication Commission's criminal inquiry into the intrusion was unsuccessful in locating them. Bela Kiss. Bela Kiss was a Hungarian serial killer. He is thought to have murdered at least 23 young women and one man, and attempted to pickle their bodies in large metal drums that he kept on his property. Phantom Killer. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders, a term coined by the contemporary press, was a series of 4 unsolved serial murders and related violent crimes committed in and around the Texarkana region of Arkansas and Texas in the late winter and spring of 1946. They were attributed to the Phantom of Texarkana, or simply the Phantom Killer, a supposed unsolved serial killer. This fictitious offender is accused of attacking 8 individuals over the course of 10 weeks, 5 of whom perished. Prahlad Jani. This was an Indian Breatharian monk who claimed to have lived without food and water since 1940. He said that the goddess Amba had kept him alive. The results of the investigations on him, however, have been kept under wraps and met with distrust. He frequently appeared in the media and in public. Johnny has been the subject of 2 observational studies and 1 imaging research. Both the observational studies, conducted in 2003 and 2010, involved Sudhir Shah, a neurologist at the Sterling Hospitals in India. Dr. Shah had previously examined individuals who claimed to possess unusual abilities, including other fasters like Hira Ratan Manek. Although neither study was submitted to a scientific journal, the researchers in both cases found that Johnny could have survived the testing durations without food and water while remaining healthy. Tarare. This was a French showman and soldier who was renowned for his peculiar eating patterns and hunger. He could consume enormous amounts of meat, but he was always hungry. His parents were unable to support him, and as a teenager, he was kicked out of the house. Before serving as the opening act for a traveling con man, he traveled France with a group of thieves and prostitutes. He would perform this trick while swallowing corks, stones, live animals, and a whole bunch of apples. As a street performer in Paris, he later brought this performance there. He volunteered to undergo any technique that may alleviate his appetite after enlisting in the French army, and was given tobacco tablets, wine vinegar, and soft-boiled eggs as treatment. He would sneak out of the hospital to scavenge in gutters, trash piles, and outside butcher shops. He also attempted to drink the blood of other hospital patients and eat the corpses in the hospital's morgue. The procedures failed, and the doctors were unable to keep him on a controlled diet. He was expelled from the hospital because he was thought to have eaten a small child. 4 years later, in Versailles, he made a comeback with a serious case of tuberculosis. After a lethal episode of explosive diarrhea, he passed away. The Sodder Children. The Sodder home in Fayetteville, West Virginia, was destroyed by fire on Christmas Eve, 1945, in the United States. George Sodder, his wife Jenny, and 9 of their 10 kids lived there at the time. George, Jenny, and 4 of the 9 kids managed to flee the burning building. The remaining 5 kids' bodies had never been discovered. The surviving Sodder family believed for the rest of their lives that the 5 missing children survived. In the early 1950s, state and federal efforts to further examine the case provided no fresh information. The family did, however, receive what might have been a photograph of one of the sons in the 1960s as an adult. In the 21st century, a final surviving daughter and their grandkids carried on raising awareness of the issue in media and online. Black Volga Murderer. Yuri Kurilsky, known as the Monster with the Black Volga, was a Belarusian serial killer who assaulted and killed 3 teenagers around the Vitebsk region from 2004 to 2005. He was convicted, sentenced to death, and subsequently executed for these crimes in 2007. According to a psychiatric evaluation, Kurilsky was sane and qualified to stand trial. He repeated his guilt during the trial and begged the families of the victims for their forgiveness. Upon hearing the verdict, Kurilsky simply smiled. Kurilsky was executed in 2007, though the precise date is unknown. Indrid Cold. The Smiling Man, also known as Indrid Cold, is a supposed humanoid creature. The being earned his moniker because of his propensity to smile at practically everyone he encountered. He reportedly still travels to West Virginia occasionally. Although the Grinning Man is frequently connected to UFO activity and is occasionally thought to be an alien, it is said that he has a human-like look. He was noted as being over 6 feet tall and sporting a fluorescent green outfit with a black belt on his initial appearance. He had small, beady eyes that were spaced widely apart and a dark-colored skin. He was said to be without a nose, ears, or hair. In his second known encounter, his suit was said to be blue instead of green, but still retained its reflective property. Mante tribesmen. One of the first ethnic groups usually mentioned as having lived in Aceh, India, is the Mante. Due to the intermarriage with other non-indigenous people groups came later, these people are now extinct or have vanished. Strong scientific evidence for the existence of this people is still lacking as of writing. In March 2017, there were video recordings by a group of bikers in Aceh who accidentally saw and recorded a man that was thought to be part of the tribesmen. When the video was posted to YouTube, it swiftly gained popularity and was reported on in Indonesian news outlets and social media. Alexander Solenik. Alexander Viktorovich Solenik was a Russian gangster known for his reputation as a notorious hitman in the Russian criminal underground. Up until his disappearance during his second prison break, Solenik spent a significant portion of the 1990s engaged in Russian mob activity. In 1997, Solenik's body was discovered in Athens, Greece. In the weeks after the body was found, Greek authorities raided the villas belonging to Solenik's organization and found an arsenal of weapons. They also discovered that Solenik had been hired to carry out a hit in Italy shortly before his death. Edward Mordache. This is the apocryphal subject of an urban legend who was born in the 19th century as the heir to an English peerage with a face at the back of his head. The face allegedly had the ability to cry, laugh, or whisper. Mordache pleaded with the physicians to take it out, saying it spoke to him negatively at night. Mordache took his own life when he was 23 years old. According to a report, Mordache had a face resembling an Antinous and a physique of exceptional grace. According to reports, the second face on the back of the skull was female and had a pair of eyes and drooling lips. The replica face was claimed to, quote, sneer when Mordache was joyful, and grin while Mordache was grieving, despite being unable to see, eat, or speak. Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba is a figure first mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. She transports a convoy of priceless presents from the Israelite King Solomon in the original story. The story has been greatly elaborated upon in Jewish, Islamic, Yemenite, and Ethiopian cultures, and it has given rise to one of the most popular and fruitful cycles of legends in the Middle East. The existence of this queen is a topic of debate among historians. Undervik Maskerovarko was a Russian author who supposedly had extremely controversial opinions about the Russian government and other hot topics at the time. Due to this, everything related to him was heavily censored by Russia. Today, if you try and Google him, you will not find anything about him, as he's been completely wiped from the internet. Adam Rayner. This was one of the only people in recorded history to have been both a dwarf and a giant. He is believed to have had acromegaly. When World War I started, Rayner attempted to enlist in the army, but was rejected because he was too tiny and frail at 4'6". Rayner tried again a year later, but even after gaining a full 2 inches in height, the army still turned him down. He died aged 51, measuring 7'8", although some newspapers reported his height as 7'10". He is the only man in history that can be classified as both a dwarf as well as a giant. Valiant Thor. Valiant Thor was allegedly an alien who came to Earth to provide some type of assistance to humanity in the late 1950s. He had an IQ of 1200 and spoke 100 different languages. He looked mostly human, but he had 6 fingers on each hand and had some internal physiological differences as well. After working for the US government for a good amount of time, he left in his spaceship. Several prominent figures of the time, such as President Dwight Eisenhower and Richard Nixon, both are said to have met with him during his stay on Earth. Several whistleblowers, such as Phil Schneider, have also claimed to have met this individual. Like and subscribe to see more videos like this, and a big shout out to the channel members that help make this channel possible. Thank you all for watching. Maker, out.